Before you hear her story, you must understand one thing. Some wounds do not fade with time, they wait. In silence, in shadow, in the corners of a woman's heart where her dignity was once shattered. 5 years ago, Eleanor Harwood was cast out of London in disgrace. Not because she sinned, not because she erred, but because a powerful earl found it easier to mock her than admit he saw her. Society laughed, her family abandoned her, and the man she once admired said nothing. But exile did not break her, it forged her. And now, as London whispers of her unexpected return, as a rival suitor recognizes the brilliance she fought to reclaim, as the earl who once mocked her feels his heart split open with regret, a story begins. A story of the woman they tried to silence. A story of the man who spent his life hiding his truth until his last breath spoke only her name. If you think you know what love is, if you think you understand remorse, redemption, or longing, listen closely, because this is not a tale of a perfect heroine or a noble earl. This is the story of a wound that never healed, and the woman who finally chooses to. Chapter 1. The Wound. Rain had a cruel way of remembering things. It did not simply fall over Blythebridge Estate that afternoon, it mourned. It filled the air with a gray heaviness that clung to the skin, soaking into the bones as if nature itself grieved for her. Eleanor Harwood stood beneath the archway, fingers curled tight around the handle of her small valise, watching carriages roll past the gravel drive in elegant arcs. Laughter spilled from their windows, bright and careless, as though the world had not ended that morning. But hers had. Her stepmother's voice still echoed in the corridor behind her, sharp as shattered glass. "You have humiliated this family for the last time, Eleanor. If the Earl himself says you are unsuitable for polite company, who am I to disagree?" Unsuitable. The word bruised deeper than a blow. She had not cried when Lady Harwood delivered the decree that she was to be sent away to the countryside immediately, without a farewell, without a chance to explain the accusation that had started the entire scandal. She had not cried when her stepsisters tittered in the background, whispering their cruel delight at finally ridding themselves of the unfashionable, too quiet girl who did not know how to flirt or flatter. But she had nearly broken when she saw him. The Earl of Winthorpe, Adrian Thorne, riding past the front steps with his hunting party, all leather boots and storm-dark eyes, every inch the man society revered. He did not even glance at her, not once, not even when his companions laughed about the Harwood girl's foolish infatuation. He said nothing. He did nothing. Not a defense, not a word, not even a look. And yet the humiliation, the tears, the whispers they had started because of him, because she had dared to admire him, because she had dared to believe he possessed a heart capable of kindness, because someone had found the half-finished portrait she had sketched of him, tucked between the pages of her journal, and shown it during a dinner party as a form of entertainment. They had laughed. The Earl had smirked. That smirk, she would carry it with her for years. Not because it mocked her, but because she saw a flicker of something else behind it, something that looked frighteningly like recognition and regret. But if regret existed, he buried it as swiftly as the servants swept away the torn remnants of her dignity. "Get into the carriage, Eleanor," her stepmother hissed now, snapping her out of her thoughts. "And do not return until you have learned to behave like a lady." Behave like a lady, as though she had been the one who laughed, as though she had been the one who betrayed herself. She stepped into the cold interior of the carriage. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing away the last view of the estate she once believed would be her future. Instead of lace-draped ballrooms and warm candlelit soirees, she was being sent to her late mother's cottage in a forgotten corner of the country, a place reserved for unwanted things. The wheels began to turn. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Her eyes stung. But she did not weep. She pressed her palm to the foggy window. The world blurred into streaks of green and gray, and she let memory swallow her. She remembered the Earl at 17, already tall, already commanding, already doomed to inherit not just a title but a legacy of cold perfection. She remembered how his gaze softened when he looked at horses or books or the cliffs by the sea, how he never smiled at society ladies, how he never bowed under pressure, how he held himself as though emotion was an enemy he could not afford. She remembered asking him foolishly, softly, if he believed people could change. He had looked at her for a long moment before replying with a slow, careful no. Perhaps that was why he did not believe she could be anything but ridiculous, forgettable. A girl whose affection meant nothing. She swallowed hard. Fine. If he believed she had no dignity, she would build some. If he believed her weak, she would grow strong. If he believed she would break, she would not give him the satisfaction. The countryside swallowed her for nearly 5 years. 5 years in which she rebuilt herself from the ashes of humiliation. 5 years in which she learned the power of solitude and the sharpness of silence. 5 years in which she studied art, not as a pastime but as a calling. She painted portraits of farmers, fishermen, widows, faces etched with real struggle, not the powdered vanities of London. She earned coins quietly, anonymously, until she had enough to support herself without a single hand from her stepmother. A stronger woman emerged from that lonely exile, one who knew her worth even if society did not. But wounds, no matter how carefully bandaged, had a way of humming beneath the skin, a whisper of pain, a reminder of what once broke you. The Earl's face, sharp, unreadable, still haunted her brushes. She hated that. She hated him, or told herself she did. But hatred was only a twisted echo of something once tender, and tenderness was dangerous. On a particularly cold morning, when the sea winds cut across the fields like knives, a letter arrived. The envelope heavy, the seal unfamiliar, the handwriting elegant but urgent, her name written as though spoken with breath that trembled. Miss Eleanor Harwood, your presence is requested in London at once. Matters of inheritance regarding your late grandfather require your immediate attention. A carriage will arrive within the week. Please be prepared. Signed, Mr. Edwin Hale, solicitor to the Harwood estate. Her breath froze. London. Return. The word she had sworn never to face again. The world she had left behind, its cruelty, its shame, its glittering judgment was calling her back. Her fingers trembled around the letter. 5 years had passed. 5 years since the Earl mocked her. 5 years since society discarded her. 5 years since she walked away with a heart stitched together by silence. She could remain here, safe, removed, forgotten. Or she could step back into London with the strength she had forged from the wreckage of her past. Her heartbeat pulsed loudly in her ears. She folded the letter and whispered to the empty cottage, "So be it." For the first time, the decision was hers. Her eyes lifted toward the window where the sky swirled in stormy gray. She wondered briefly, foolishly, if the Earl of Winthorpe was still the man who had mocked her once. And why? Why her heart still whispered his name. The carriage would arrive in 7 days. And when it did, it would not be the same girl climbing inside. It would be the woman she had become. Chapter 2. Return and Collision. London had a way of swallowing a person whole. Not immediately, not violently, but with a slow, elegant suffocation that began the moment one crossed its boundaries. The clatter of wheels on cobblestone, the perfume-laced air, the towering facades of white stone, all of it pressed inward, reminding Eleanor Harwood of the life she was meant to live, the girl she once was, and the wound she never truly escaped. 5 years ago, she had left this city in disgrace. Now she returned in a carriage she paid for herself, wearing a gown she had sewn with her own hands, carrying a confidence that still felt new like a blade she had only recently learned to sharpen. The city's simmering hum wrapped around her as she stepped down onto the bustling street outside the solicitor's office. Her boots touched London soil for the first time since her banishment. Eleanor inhaled slowly. Different. Everything felt different. Or perhaps she was the one who had changed. Inside the office, Mr. Hale greeted her with polite astonishment, as though uncertain whether the quietly exiled girl he remembered could truly be the poised woman standing before him. "You have your grandfather's eyes," he murmured as he ushered her into his office. "Strong eyes, purposeful." Eleanor allowed herself a small smile. "I hope the rest of me proves half as dependable." He chuckled lightly before pulling out a set of documents. "I'll speak frankly, Miss Harwood. Your return will not go unnoticed. Society remembers." She stiffened. "Society remembers what it chooses to." "Precisely," Mr. Hale replied gently. "Which is why you must be prepared. Prepared for whispers. Prepared for stares. Prepared for the ghosts of humiliation that lingered in the corners of every ballroom. Prepared most of all for him." As though sensing her thoughts, London's air shifted, charged, sharp, unsettling. "Now," Mr. Hale continued, sliding a packet of papers toward her, "your inheritance matters require a few signatures. There are also properties your grandfather intended you to assess personally. A knock interrupted him. Firm, controlled, familiar. Eleanor's breath caught. It couldn't be, but it was. The door opened, and the office seemed to shrink around the man who stepped inside, bringing with him a sweep of cold air and a presence that filled the room like a storm cloud. The Earl of Winthorpe, Adrian Thorne. Older now, sharper, a man carved from winter and regret. His dark hair was swept back with careless precision, his shoulders wrapped in a coat of deep hunter green, his boots carrying the faint sheen of polished authority. He held himself with the same rigid poise she remembered, but something else lingered beneath it. Something heavier, worn. Mr. Hale rose quickly. Your Grace, I did not expect. His gaze flicked toward Eleanor and froze. For a heartbeat, time fractured. The world dissolved into silence. Herr Lunk's refused breath. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes, widened with something that looked like disbelief, then something far more dangerous. Recognition, memory, regret. Eleanor's fingers curled against her skirt. He looked at her as though she were a ghost, or a sin he thought he had buried long ago. Miss Harwood, he said at last, voice deeper than she remembered. Rougher. You have returned. Her heart shouldn't have reacted. It shouldn't have ached, but it did. She bowed her head with perfect composure. Your Grace, he inhaled sharply, like the sound of her voice wounded him. Mr. Hale cleared his throat. Your Grace, I was unaware you had urgent business regarding Miss Harwood's inheritance. I do not, the Earl replied, still staring at her. I came, he paused, jaw tightening. I came because I was told Miss Harwood had returned to London. That was a lie. The Earl of Winthorpe never came anywhere without purpose. Eleanor straightened. If you are concerned my presence will disturb society, Your Grace, rest assured you need not be troubled. I do not intend to reclaim what it took from me. His eyes darkened. You speak as though you imagine I care about society's opinion. Do you not? Eleanor asked quietly. A subtle flinch betrayed him. She had touched something raw. Mr. Hale looked desperately between them. Perhaps we should... But he was interrupted again, this time by the sound of another knock lighter. More refined, the door opened to reveal a gentleman Eleanor did not recognize. Tall, elegantly dressed in charcoal, with warm amber eyes that carried both intelligence and mischief. His dark curls framed his forehead with scholarly disarray, and he held a leather-bound notebook against his chest as though it were a natural extension of himself. Forgive me, Mr. Hale, the newcomer said, smiling. You requested the documents regarding the Royal Academy Commission. I have them here. His gaze drifted to Eleanor. Interest flickered instantly, genuine, appreciative, unguarded. Good afternoon, miss, he said with a courteous bow. I am Lord Sebastian Alverton. And you are an artist, are you not? Eleanor blinked. I beg your pardon? He held up her file. Your petition for registry at the Academy is included in the documents for your inheritance review. Your work was seen by the selection committee last month. He smiled warmly. They were quite taken with it. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The Earl's jaw tightened visibly. Lord Alverton continued. Your portrait of the fisherman by the cliffs, extraordinary use of shadow. They are considering you for formal apprenticeship. I would very much like to discuss your technique, if you permit. Eleanor parted her lips. Stuna. She had never shown her paintings publicly, never asked for praise, and certainly never expected an Academy scholar to recognize them. Yet here he was, offering respect freely, while the Earl watched with a gaze that had turned sharp as a blade. Lord Alverton extended a hand. May I escort you after your meeting? There is a tea room nearby, quiet, well-suited for conversation. The Earl's voice cut through the room. No? The word cracked like a command. Lord Alverton raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? The Earl's jaw flexed. Miss Harwood has only just arrived in London. She requires time before accepting invitations. Eleanor turned her gaze on him, cold fire rising inside her. How curious, she murmured. A man who never cared for my decisions now seeks to dictate them. The Earl's eyes darkened. That is not... But Eleanor stepped closer to Lord Alverton. Thank you, she said, voice steady. I would be honored to visit the tea room with you. Lord Alverton smiled, offering a graceful nod. It will be my pleasure. The Earl's hand curled at his side, tension palpable, jealousy unmistakable. though he masked it with the skill of a man accustomed to hiding his sins. Eleanor gathered her documents. "Mr. Hale," she said softly, "please send any further papers to the address I will provide. I find myself suddenly very occupied." The Earl took a step forward. "Miss Harwood." She did not look at him. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. She walked out with Lord Alverton at her side, the sunlight catching her profile as though London itself welcomed her return. Behind her, the Earl remained frozen in the doorway, shoulders tense, expression unreadable. But his eyes burned like a man who had just realized the past he buried had returned in a form he was utterly unprepared for. As Eleanor stepped out into the bustling London street, the wind lifted her hair, and she heard the Earl's voice, barely audible from behind. "Eleanor." Not a command, not a mockery. A whisper. A wound reopening. A regret too late. Chapter tries. The Duke's secret regret. Regret was an old companion of Adrian Thorne, one he had managed to silence for years by burying it beneath duty, discipline, and a reputation carved from ice. But the moment he saw Eleanor Harwood standing in Mr. Hale's office, poised, radiant, untouchable in her newfound strength, regret roared back to life with a vengeance. He did not return to his carriage. He did not return to Winthorpe House. He walked. For a man of his stature, walking through London unaccompanied was nearly scandalous. But scandal was nothing compared to the storm unraveling inside him. Eleanor was back. Olive, breathtaking, changed, and entirely beyond his reach. He entered the private chamber hidden at the back of Winthorpe House, an unmarked room only 2 footmen knew existed. A room he had built himself. A room no guests, no friends, no lovers, and certainly no family had ever been allowed to enter. He struck a match and lit the single oil lamp on the desk. Its glow revealed what he had kept hidden for years. Shelves lined with canvases, stacks of letters never sent, newspapers with her name circled in red ink, sketches of her profile, some delicate, some frantic, drawn on nights he could not sleep. The Duke of Winthorpe did not believe in ghosts, yet hers lived in every corner of this room. He picked up the first letter, the one written the day she was exiled. "Eleanor, I should have spoken. I should have said your name with respect instead of silence. I should have defended you. I failed you, though you will never know it." He had never dared to send it. Another letter written a year later. "I rode past Blythebridge today. I do not know why. You were long gone. Yet the house felt wrong without you." He skimmed another. "If you ever return, I will." The sentence ended abruptly. He had not known what he would do. He still didn't. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, trying to steady the chaos clawing at his insides. For years he had convinced himself he had done the right thing, that mocking her portrait had been necessary, that distancing himself protected them both, that her exile was inevitable. But lies had a way of rotting from the inside. The truth was far uglier. He had mocked her because he was afraid of how she made him feel, afraid of the softness she awakened in him, afraid of wanting something he was not meant to want. The Earl of Winthorpe did not marry for love. His father had reminded him of that every day of his life. Love is distraction. Love is weakness. The woman you marry must serve the title, not the heart. But Eleanor Harwood, she was not built for arrangement or cold obligation. She was built for fire and truth, and a kind of love that could unmake a man like him. And that terrified him. So he had chosen cruelty, chosen distance, chosen silence, and lost her. For 5 years, he lived with that wound. He hid it beneath the perfect mask of a perfect nobleman, a man who did not feel, did not falter, did not regret. But seeing her in that office, hearing her voice, watching her smile at another man, it shattered every lie he had ever told himself. A soft knock broke through his storm. His butler's voice carried through the door. "Your Grace, you requested immediate reports on Miss Harwood's circumstances." Adrian's back straightened. "Enter." The butler placed a folder on the desk. Her years in the countryside, her work, and, as requested, information on Lord Sebastian Alverton. Adrian did not breathe until the door closed again. He opened the file. Every page felt like a confession of his own failures. Eleanor's life documented in ink, her modest earnings, her anonymous art commissions, her volunteer work in the coastal orphanage, the stability she built for herself without a single ounce of help. She had survived without him. She had become extraordinary without him. His chest tightened painfully. Then came the pages about Alverton, a scholar from a prominent family, a patron of the Royal Academy, unmarried, highly regarded, well-liked by society, charismatic, a man who valued intelligence over pedigree, a man who saw Eleanor immediately, a man who spoke to her without hesitation, a man who could offer her everything Adrian had denied her. Adrian's grip tightened on the paper. Jealousy burned hot, sharp, and unrestrained. He had spent years trying to forget her. Alverton had needed seconds to admire her. The thought was unbearable. He slammed the folder shut and strode across the room to the far shelf. There, leaning against the wall, was the portrait, the one he had painted himself. A woman in soft, natural light hair swept back, eyes lowered not in shame, but in quiet strength. Her expression held something impossible to look at too long. Hope. He had painted it from memory 2 years after she left. He touched the corner of the canvas. "You deserve better than the man I was," he whispered. The room swallowed his confession. A long moment passed before he forced himself away. He had to see her again. He had to speak to her. Even if she hated him, even if she refused to listen, even if he had already lost her to another man, he could no longer remain silent. He donned his coat, fastened his gloves, and stepped into the hall. But at the front door, he stopped. A footman bowed. "Your Grace, a message for you." "No." Adrian broke the seal. A single line from Mr. Hale. "Miss Harwood has gone to the Astoria tea room with Lord Alverton." The letters blurred for an instant. He was too late. Again, he stepped outside as the sky darkened above him, the city's hum growing louder, harsher. He had spent his life mocking her because he did not know how to want her. Now another man wanted her easily. He mounted his horse and rode hard, fast, reckless, toward the Astoria. He told himself he only wished to ensure her safety. He told himself he only wished to speak with her. He told himself he could endure seeing her with another man. But the truth broke through with each pounding stride. He was afraid she would smile for Alverton the way she once smiled for him. Afraid she would let Alverton see the softness he had destroyed. Afraid she would choose a man who deserved her. He reached the tea room. Through the window, he saw her. Eleanor laughing softly, her hand resting near her teacup as Lord Alverton leaned in with warm enthusiasm. Her eyes bright, her posture relaxed. For the first time in years, she looked happy. Adrian's breath caught painfully. Lord Alverton said something. Eleanor smiled wider. Adrian's hands gripped the reins. A knife of jealousy twisted deep. He felt something inside him crack, something old, something rusted shut, something he had never allowed himself to feel fully. Loss. Real, devastating loss. He watched her for one more moment before whispering the truth aloud, the words tasting like broken glass. "I've already lost her, haven't I?" But the night offered no answer. Only the echo of the past rising to haunt him again. Chapter 4. Rising Tension. The Astoria tea room was a sanctuary of soft violins, gilt-edged mirrors, and hushed conversation, one of the few respectable establishments in London where a woman could be seen without immediately being judged for merely existing. Eleanor sat across from Lord Sebastian Alverton, feeling the warmth of the teacup seep slowly into her palms. It was strangely grounding in a city that once sought to unmake her. "You do not seem overwhelmed," Lord Alverton observed, studying her with a gentle curiosity. "Most artists tremble when the Academy takes notice." "I trembled enough in my past," Eleanor replied softly. "I find I have no trembling left to give." He chuckled. "Then London is fortunate. It needs more who do not tremble." Her lips curved, not a full smile, but the suggestion of one. "And do you tremble, my lord?" "Frequently," he admitted, "but only privately, and never where it might ruin my reputation as a mysterious, brilliant scholar." Her laughter finally escaped her, a light, unguarded sound. Outside the window, unseen by her, Adrian Thorne stiffened in his saddle as her laughter drifted through the glass like a haunting melody he had no right to claim. Inside, Lord Alverton leaned forward in earnest. "Miss Harwood, I meant every word earlier. The Academy found your ability remarkable. They are seeking fresh perspectives, realism, authenticity, something London pretends to admire but rarely understands." Her fingers tightened around the cup. A part of her still expected the world to mock her ambitions, but Alverton's voice carried no condescension. "Only respect." "You are kind," she murmured. I am correct, he countered. She met his gaze, and what she saw there frightened her a little, because it was sincerity, interest, possibility. Miss Harwood, he continued, I would be honored to introduce you to the Academy's board myself. Your work deserves the chance your past denied you. Her breath thinned. A commission for a woman who was exiled? He lifted a brow. A woman who survived exile, remade herself, and returned stronger. Tell me who is more interesting to paint than that. Her chest tightened. Once long ago, she would have given anything for someone to see her this way. But now, she wasn't sure what to do with it. Before she could answer, a shadow rippled over the table. A presence, a familiar chill. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Miss Harwood, came the Earl's voice, deep, strained, and far too controlled. Might I have a moment? Lord Alverton leaned back, entirely unbothered. Your Grace, you seem tense. Adrian ignored him, eyes fixed only on Eleanor. She forced calm into her voice. I am in the middle of conversation, Your Grace. His jaw flexed. I see that. Then perhaps another time, she said coolly. Another time, as if time had not once destroyed her under his watch. Alverton tapped a finger against the table. If this is regarding Miss Harwood's inheritance, Your Grace, Mr. Hale assured us there would be no further complications. It is not regarding her inheritance, Adrian said, gaze darkening. It is regarding her. Eleanor inhaled sharply. Lord Alverton's eyes narrowed slightly. Is that so? Yes, Adrian said. It is long overdue. Alverton glanced toward Eleanor. Do you wish to speak with him? Her pulse raced. She looked at Lord Alverton, who watched her without pressure. Then at Adrian, standing tall, gloved hands tight at his sides, eyes fierce with something she refused to name. Your Grace, she said in a low voice that trembled only slightly. London taught me that silence was safer than speaking. So now I choose when and to whom I speak. Adrian swallowed hard. Then choose me. Her heartbeat faltered. Choose me. He had never asked for anything before. Only commanded. Dismissed. Mocked. Lord Alverton folded his arms. If Miss Harwood wishes to speak privately with you, she may. Otherwise, Your Grace, you are interrupting. Adrian's gaze flicked to him, tension crackling like lightning. Miss Harwood, Adrian said quietly, please. The word please from him sounded broken. Eleanor's breath shook. She did not want to feel anything for him. Not now. Not when another man finally saw her worth without first wounding her. But she needed answers. Needed truth. Needed closure for the wound that never fully healed. 5 minutes, she said finally. Adrian exhaled relief, desperation, gratitude. It was impossible to tell. Lord Alverton rose politely. I will remain here. Take your time, Miss Harwood. As she followed Adrian outside, she felt the weight of 2 gazes, one warm with hope, the other heavy with unspoken torment. They stood beneath the awning as carriages clattered by. Adrian faced her fully. Eleanor, you do not have the right to say my name, she cut in sharply. Not when you turned it into something people laughed at. He flinched, truly flinched. Years too late. I know, he said quietly. And yet I cannot stop saying it, even when I have no right. She crossed her arms, guarding herself. State your purpose, Your Grace. He exhaled slowly, visibly struggling. I need you to understand. What happened years ago? What happened, she said, voice trembling with contained fury, was that I was mocked for admiring you, humiliated before society, labeled foolish, and then cast aside. His eyes flooded with shame. You never defended me, she finished. Not even once. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. He closed his eyes. You are right. Her breath faltered. She had expected excuses. Pride. Indifference. Not this. He continued, voice raw. I failed you. I failed myself. I failed every decent thing I imagined I could be. And I have regretted it every day for 5 years. Something twisted painfully inside her. Regret does not undo cruelty, she whispered. No, he said. But truth can, and I owe you that much. Before she could respond, thunder cracked across the sky, an unexpected rumble that mirrored the tension between them. The first drops of rain fell. London wept on cue. Adrian stepped closer, as if drawn by instinct. Eleanor, I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not expect it. But you deserve to know that I did not mock you because I found you ridiculous." "Then why?" she whispered. He hesitated like a man about to slice open his own chest. "Because I could not bear the idea of wanting something I was forbidden to have." The air deserted her lungs. She stepped back, dizzy. Forbidden. Wanted. Words she once dreamed of hearing now twisted by context and time into something dangerous. She steadied her voice. "And you believe this confession changes anything?" He swallowed harshly. "No, but I had to say it before it was too late." Her pulse wasn't steady. Not even close. "Before what is too late?" she asked. His gaze dropped to the tea-room window, where Lord Alverton still sat patiently, waiting for her. "Before you choose someone else," he said. The rain intensified. "Miss Harwood!" Sebastian called from inside as he hurried to open the door, offering her shelter from the storm. Eleanor turned to Adrian one last time. "You lost the right to influence my decisions," she said softly. 5 years ago. Then she walked back inside. Alverton held the door for her with gentle respect. "Are you unharmed?" She nodded barely, and as she sat again across from him, her hands trembling around the teacup, the truth settled into her bones. She had not come to London seeking love. She had not come seeking closure, but she had returned to a storm that would change everything. Outside, through the rain-splattered window, the Duke of Winthorpe remained standing, a man staring at the woman he once mocked, a man who finally understood the price of his silence, a man who feared it was already too late. Chapter 5. Public Confrontation. The invitation arrived the next morning, glittering gold ink on thick cream parchment. The type of stationery designed to impress and condemn in equal measure. The Duchess of Regency requests the honor of Miss Eleanor Harwood's presence at her spring soirée. Eleanor froze. Her stepmother, Lady Harwood, was a cousin to the Duchess. This event was precisely the kind of battlefield society adored. Elegant, perfumed, and viciously public. The very people who once laughed at her would be there. Lord Alverton, upon arriving with documents from the Academy, immediately noticed her stiff posture. "Ah," he murmured, tilting his head toward the envelope. "One of those invitations. You know what it means," she replied quietly. "It means," Sebastian said, offering a soft smile, "that London wishes to inspect the woman courageous enough to return." Eleanor swallowed. "It wishes to devour her." He shook his head. "No, that was 5 years ago. Things are different now. You are different now." She lifted her gaze to him, grateful for his confidence, until another voice intruded. "Miss Harwood will not attend. Adrian." He stood at the edge of the drawing room, broad shoulders filling the doorway, expression dark with unspoken turmoil. His presence vibrated through the room like the low toll of a bell. Lord Alverton raised an eyebrow. "Your Grace seems to believe he may dictate Miss Harwood's schedule." Adrian's jaw flexed. "I am concerned for her safety. The Duchess's soirees are known for entertainment and for spectacle. If Lady Harwood attends, which she will then, Miss Harwood will undoubtedly be targeted." Sebastian smiled calmly. "Then she will have her champions." Eleanor glanced between them. 2 men, 2 worlds, 2 different expressions of care. Adrian's protective fury, Sebastian's steady respect. Very different. Both dangerous in their own way. Eleanor lifted the invitation, voice steady. "I will attend." Adrian inhaled sharply. "Eleanor," she faced him fully. "I am not the girl you left defenseless, Your Grace. I will not hide from the people who once mocked me." His eyes flickered with pain. "I do not wish to see you hurt." "Then," she replied softly, "you should have thought of that years ago." Sebastian stepped forward. "Shall I escort you, Miss Harwood?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes." Adrian's nostrils flared with helpless anger. Sebastian bowed politely. "Then it is settled." But Adrian spoke again, his voice low, determined, a blade barely sheathed. "I will be there." It was not an invitation. It was a vow. The Duchess's spring soirée was a glittering trap, draped in roses and malice. Hundreds of candles floated in crystal sconces. Perfume heavy as honey clung to the air. Laughter rippled like silk over marble floors polished to a mirrored gleam. Eleanor stepped into the grand ballroom on Lord Alverton's arm, her gown a deep blue velvet that matched the fierce shade of her reborn confidence. Whispers erupted instantly. "Is that? Oh heavens!" She returned. "After 5 years? How bold. How foolish. Look, Lady Harwood has seen her." Eleanor's pulse quickened. Her stepmother approached, draped in pearls and pretense. "Eleanor," Lady Harwood said, voice sweetened with venom. "How unexpected. You truly have nerve." "Or dignity," Eleanor said gently. A small crowd gathered, sensing blood. Lady Harwood pursed her lips. "Society would have overlooked your childish infatuation once. But returning now? Seeking attention again? My dear, some women are simply not meant for the spotlight." Sebastian stepped forward. "Miss Harwood seeks nothing but what she rightfully deserves respect." A few ladies gasped at the impropriety of a gentleman taking such a stance. Lady Harwood laughed lightly. "Respect? For someone who sketched noblemen in secret like a lovesick—" "Enough." The word cracked through the room like thunder. The crowd parted as Adrian Thorne strode forward. The Earl of Winthorpe, a man society feared, a man whose presence demanded silence. Every head bowed, except Eleanor's. Lady Harwood stiffened. "Your Grace, I was merely—" "Humiliating a woman who deserves far better than your regard," Adrian said coldly. The ballroom trembled. Ladies clutched their fans. Gentlemen exchanged shocked glances. Adrian continued, voice slicing like a winter wind. "Miss Harwood's work is being considered by the Royal Academy. She is not merely a woman of talent, she is a woman of integrity. You would do well to remember your place." Lady Harwood blanched. Sebastian watched with mild amusement. "Your Grace speaks truthfully." Eleanor's heart pounded. Adrian had never defended her publicly before, not once. But this was not affection. This was guilt, fear, possibly jealousy. Lady Harwood recovered enough to smile thinly. "How noble of you, Your Grace. But we all know her past indiscretion." Eleanor went still. There it was. The wound. The mockery that started everything. Lady Harwood lifted her chin. "The portrait she drew of you. Her obsession." Gasps echoed around them. Sebastian stiffened beside Eleanor. But before he could speak, Adrian stepped forward closer to Eleanor. Closer than propriety allowed. The room held its breath. "If anyone here mocked Miss Harwood for her art," Adrian said, voice low and lethal, "they mocked what they themselves could never understand." Lady Harwood sputtered. "Her behavior was honest," Adrian cut in. "Admiration expressed in a painting is no offense. Your cruelty was." The crowd rippled with shock. He turned slightly, his voice dropping just enough for Eleanor alone to hear. "And my silence was the greatest offense of all." Eleanor's breath hitched. Sebastian looked sharply between them. Lady Harwood faltered, suddenly unsure. "Your Grace, surely you do not imply—" "I imply," Adrian said icily, "that Miss Harwood was wronged, and that wrong will not be repeated tonight." The Duchess herself, sensing catastrophe, glided forward to smooth over the scene. "Lady Harwood, perhaps we should step aside for a moment." But whispers were already spreading like wildfire. The Earl defended her. He never defends anyone. Why her? Did something happen between them? Look, he cannot stop looking at her. Adrian stepped back only when Lady Harwood retreated in embarrassment. Eleanor's throat tightened. "So," Sebastian murmured softly beside her, "that was intense." She didn't answer. Because Adrian was still watching her eyes burning, chest rising with breath, he seemed unable to steady. "Miss Harwood," he said quietly, "may I—" "No," she whispered, stepping away from him. The hurt on his face was brief but devastating. Sebastian gently placed a hand on her back. "Perhaps some fresh air, Miss Harwood?" She nodded. They walked toward the open balcony, but halfway there, Eleanor turned just once. Adrian still stood where she'd left him alone in the middle of a ballroom full of people, staring at the woman he had once mocked, now publicly defended, and feared was slipping through his fingers. Lightning flashed through the windows as thunder cracked the sky. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her. She stepped into the cool night air, heart trembling. Inside, the ballroom erupted with speculation. Outside, Adrian closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I am losing her again." Chapter 6. Revelations. The night air bit at Eleanor's skin as she stepped onto the balcony, her breath clouding in the chill. London stretched before her in a shimmering mosaic of lamplight and shadow, but even the city's vast sprawl could not quiet the storm inside her. She gripped the stone railing. "Steady. Breathe. Don't let him unravel you again." "Miss Harwood?" Lord Sebastian Alverton approached slowly. giving her space, respecting every boundary Adrian had once trampled. His presence was warm, gentle, a steady lighthouse against the tempest that followed her. "Are you well?" he asked, his voice soft so as not to intrude. "I am," she exhaled. "I don't know," he nodded, accepting the truth without pressing. "The Earl's behavior was dramatic. That is one word for it." Sebastian offered a small, empathetic smile. "He looked as though he were drowning. He should drown," Eleanor murmured bitterly. "He built the sea that swallowed me." Sebastian studied her with quiet interest. "Would it ease your mind to speak of it?" "No," she whispered. "It would break it." He took a small step closer, not invading, but anchoring. "Eleanor, if the Earl believes he can rewrite the past with a few public declarations, he is mistaken. A woman's heart is not a ledger he can balance when it pleases him." Her breath caught. Lord Alverton understood instinctively. Precisely the wound she carried. "He hurt you," Sebastian said softly. "Deeply." "He did." Her throat tightened. "And he never apologized." "Not then. Not when it mattered." Sebastian placed a hand on the railing beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she felt supported. "You do not owe him anything," he said. "Not your forgiveness, not your attention, not your pain." Her eyes stung, but before she could speak, a shadow spilled across the balcony entrance, a presence she felt before she heard. "Miss Harwood." Eleanor froze. "Adrian." Sebastian sighed quietly. "I will step inside, but I will return if you need me." He gave her a reassuring nod and disappeared into the ballroom, leaving her alone with the man who had once shattered her, and who now looked as though she possessed the power to shatter him in return. Adrian approached with hesitant steps, uncharacteristically unsure, as though the very ground beneath him had turned to ice. "Eleanor," he began, "I owe you the truth." She did not look at him. "You owe me nothing, Your Grace." "I owe you everything," he said, voice breaking. And far too late, his confession hung between them like a suspended blade. Eleanor turned slowly to face him. The ballroom lights framed him in gold and shadow, but even gilding could not hide the torment in his eyes. "Say what you came to say," she whispered. "Then leave me." He swallowed a hard, painful gesture. "The day you were humiliated," he said slowly, "I should have stopped it." "Yes," she said. "You should have. I should have defended you." "Yes." "I should have silenced the laughter." "Yes." He stepped closer. "But more than anything, I should never have let you be punished for my cowardice." Her breath trembled. "Cowardice?" He nodded, shame twisting in his expression. "I was a coward. A man raised to believe that emotion was weakness, that wanting anything outside duty was forbidden, that admiration affection was dangerous." Her heart clenched. "And you," he whispered, "were the most dangerous thing I had ever wanted." Eleanor shut her eyes. "Do not say that," she breathed. "Not now. Not after everything." "I must," he said. "You deserve the truth. The whole of it." He reached into his coat and pulled out a single folded sheet, worn, edges frayed, ink faded. Eleanor stared. "What is this?" "A letter," he said. "One of hundreds I wrote to you. None were sent." "Hundreds." Her throat tightened. Adrian unfolded the brittle parchment with reverence. "I wrote this. The night you were exiled." He began to read aloud. "Eleanor, you were mocked because I did not rise. You were wounded because I did not stand. Every cruel word spoken tonight was an echo of my silence. I am the reason you suffer. I am the reason you must leave. I cannot ask for forgiveness, but I cannot sleep knowing you believe I felt nothing." His hand trembled. Eleanor's heartbeat cracked open. "Stop," she whispered. "Please, stop." But Adrian shook his head, voice breaking. "I must finish. I mocked your portrait because I feared what it revealed. You saw me not the title, not the heir, not the perfect son. You saw the man I have never allowed myself to be. And like a coward, I destroyed the only honesty I had ever been offered." The letter slipped from his fingers, falling to the marble floor between them. The silence after was suffocating. Eleanor stared at it as if it were a ghost made tangible. "How long?" she whispered. "Have you been carrying this regret?" "Every day," he said. "Every morning, every night. It is the first thought that wakes me, and the last that haunts me." "And yet," she said, voice trembling, "you never tried to find me." "I did." His voice cracked. "God knows I did. But your stepmother refused me entry. Your location was never revealed. I even visited your mother's old cottage, but you had not yet arrived." Eleanor's breath hitched. He continued, agony deepening. "I searched for months, and when I finally learned where you were thriving, independent, far from me, and I feared returning would only reopen what you were trying to heal." Tears stung her eyes. She turned away from him, gripping the balcony rail until her knuckles whitened. "So that was your choice?" she whispered. "To let me heal alone? To let me believe you felt nothing?" "I thought I was protecting you," he said softly. Her laugh came out hollow. "You were protecting yourself." He flinched. She spun toward him, fire rising in her voice. "You let me be mocked, driven out, alone. You let me believe I was foolish, pathetic, forgettable." "You were never forgettable," he said, stepping forward. "Never." She recoiled, overwhelmed. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "Peace? Forgiveness? Redemption?" "No," he said, voice steadying with a truth he had buried too long. "I want the chance to prove that I am no longer the man who broke you." Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and with perfect, cruel timing, the balcony doors opened again. Sebastian stepped out. Calm, composed, protective. "Miss Harwood," he said gently, "you should know the Duchess intends to call everyone to the ballroom. A public announcement of new artistic patrons." Adrian stiffened. Sebastian continued, "She intends to mock your nomination before the Academy." Eleanor's breath froze. Of course. Lady Harwood's final blow. Adrian's eyes burned. "She will not humiliate you again, I swear it." Sebastian turned to her. "Miss Harwood, if you allow, I will stand beside you. 2 men, 2 histories, 2 futures." And Eleanor stood between them, heart thunderous, resolve trembling with the knowledge that the next moments could shatter or reshape her life forever. Chapter 7. The Rival's Offer. The Duchess's announcement was moments away. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers glowed like suspended suns, and the murmurs of London's elite rippled with anticipation sharpened by the scent of scandal. Eleanor stood just beyond the threshold, breath tight, spine rigid, 2 men flanking her like opposing forces of destiny. Sebastian's presence radiated, quiet, strength, steady, respectful, a warmth she could lean into without fear of being burned. Adrian's presence was a storm magnetic, tortured and capable of demolishing her with a single wrong move. The Duchess's voice rang across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I ask your attention." Sebastian leaned close enough for her to hear, but not close enough to break propriety. "Whatever she says, you owe none of these people your shame. Shall we go in together?" Adrian countered immediately, his voice low but desperate. "Go in with me." Eleanor's pulse hammered. 2 outstretched hands, 2 separate paths, but only one heart hers being pulled in opposite directions. "Miss Harwood," Sebastian said gently, "choose whom you trust to stand beside you, not whom society approves, not whom you fear, not whom you feel beholden to, only whom you choose." Adrian's jaw tightened, his breath unsteady. "Eleanor, choose the one who knows how deeply he wronged you. Choose the one who wants to make it right." She swallowed hard, but before she could answer, the Duchess's voice carried over the crowd once more. "Tonight, I have the pleasure of announcing a notable change in the Royal Academy's future patrons. As some of you know, the Academy seeks exceptionality in its artists." There was a ripple of knowing laughter. Eleanor's stomach turned. Sebastian stepped closer. "She wants an audience for humiliation. It is the oldest trick in London." Adrian's eyes darkened. "She will not succeed." But Eleanor knew the Duchess could if Eleanor appeared timid, ashamed, or dependent on a man to shield her. "No, not again. I will walk in alone," Eleanor whispered. Both men froze. "Alone?" Adrian repeated, voice raw. Sebastian regarded her with quiet admiration. "Then we follow when you need us." Eleanor inhaled a breath that scraped like glass through her chest and stepped into the ballroom. Heads turned. Fans fluttered. Whispers hissed like leaking steam. The Duchess smiled with predatory sweetness. "Ah, Miss Harwood, how fortunate you could join us." Eleanor curtsied with perfect grace. "Your Grace." "As I was saying," the Duchess continued smoothly, "the Academy searches for artists who understand nuance, dignity, and restraint." A ripple of laughter. Eleanor felt her cheeks warm, but she did not lower her gaze. The Duchess lifted her voice. However, it seems one aspiring artist believes talent alone is enough to erase past indiscretions. The ballroom leaned forward as one. Sebastian stiffened at the back of the room. Adrian's entire body went rigid. Eleanor breathed in slowly. Let the wound surface, then rise above it. Perhaps, the Duchess purred, Miss Harwood will enlighten us about her artistic journey. Eleanor stepped forward. Silence spread like spilled ink. She lifted her chin. Of course. The Duchess blinked, caught off guard. Eleanor's voice carried across the room, soft, steady, and incredibly sharp. When I left London 5 years ago, I did so under circumstances meant to shame me. A private sketch of mine, an expression of admiration, was displayed without my consent. More whispers. I was humiliated, she said plainly. But humiliation does not break everyone. Some of us build something from it. She saw Adrian's breath catch. Sebastian's eyes warmed. Eleanor continued. I studied. I worked. I painted. Not for applause, not for gossip, and certainly not for the approval of those who believe their judgment holds any weight over another person's worth. A murmur of surprise swept the room. She turned her gaze to the Duchess. You call my work an indiscretion, she said calmly. I call it honesty. You call my past a scandal. I call it survival. You think my presence here is an embarrassment. She paused, then smiled. Yet here you all are, listening to me. A stunned silence. Then, one person clapped. Sebastian. Then another, until the ballroom filled with applause. Not thunderous, not unanimous, but significant, enough to shift the air. The Duchess's face paled. Eleanor bowed her head politely and stepped back. As soon as applause thinned, Sebastian moved to her side. His eyes shone with admiration. Miss Harwood, he murmured. That was brilliance woven into words. She exhaled shakily. Thank you. Then his expression softened into something deeper. Eleanor, he said quietly, I have a proposal for you. Her heart stuttered. A proposal? He nodded. A partnership. Her breath quickened. He continued. The Academy wishes to commission a series portraits of ordinary people, painted with honesty and humanity. They want authenticity, and your work is precisely that. Eleanor felt her pulse flutter. I am one of their patrons, he added. I can guarantee you a place in their program. Apprenticeship, exhibitions, income, recognition. Her knees weakened. And, he said gently, if you accept, I would wish to court you. The world tilted. Sebastian stepped closer, still leaving a respectful inch between them. You deserve someone who sees your worth without needing to hurt you first. Someone who respects your art, your voice, and your strength. Someone who does not arrive only after losing you. Hare lips parted. He lowered his voice further. I want to be that man, Eleanor. She felt her heart pull, softly, steadily, toward the warmth of his offer. A future without fear. A future built on respect. A future she had once believed could not exist. But before she could respond, the crowd shifted behind her. Adrian. She did not need to turn to feel him. He approached slowly, every step carved from torment. When he reached her, he stopped a breath away. Eleanor, he said hoarsely, may I speak? Sebastian bristled, but Eleanor nodded once. Adrian struggled for words. The man who commanded armies of servants, who silenced nobles with a single glare, now faltered before her. I heard his offer, Adrian said quietly, eyes locked on hers. It is a generous one, a noble one. Sebastian crossed his arms. Adrian swallowed. But before you answer him, I beg you to let me speak my truth. Eleanor's breath trembled. Adrian's voice cracked. Eleanor, I have no right to stand here. I know that. But I love you. I have loved you since long before that cursed portrait. And I was a coward, a fool. I would give my life to rewrite that day. Herr Pulsehammer, Sebastian exhaled, slowly resigned, but dignified. Adrian shook his head, eyes glistening. I cannot promise I will be perfect. I cannot promise I will not stumble, but I can promise I will spend every day trying to be worthy of the woman you have become. The room went silent. Eleanor stood between, a man offering a future built on respect, and a man offering redemption carved from pain. 2 lives, 2 paths, 2 kinds of love. Her voice trembled as she finally spoke. I need time. Sebastian nodded with gentle understanding. Take all the time you need. Adrian bowed his head, agony tightening his posture. As long as you don't walk away from me forever, I can wait. Eleanor looked at both men, her heart a storm of contradictions. I will give you my decision soon, she said softly, but her decision would not be made here. Not in a ballroom built on gossip. Not under society's gaze. Not with 2 men watching her like she was the pivot upon which their whole world turned. She stepped back. I must think, she whispered, and she walked away, leaving both men behind, breathless and suspended in the agony of uncertainty. Chapter 8. Heroes Humbling. The next morning dawned gray, misty, and unsettlingly quiet, London's way of holding its breath. Word of last night's confrontation had already spread through townhouses and breakfast salons. Eleanor Harwood's name, once spoken only in whispers of scandal, now slipped from the lips of duchesses and barons with a strange mix of fascination and respect. Eleanor did not feel triumphant. She felt exhausted, heart bruised by the weight of choices she did not yet know how to make. She stood at the window of her small London lodging, watching the fog roll over the street, when a soft knock came at the door. Her maid peeked in. Miss, the Earl of Winthorpe is here. Eleanor's breath caught. He asks, her maid added timidly, to speak with you in the sitting room. He looks unwell, miss. Unwell. That word twisted something painful inside her, not pity, but something adjacent that she wasn't ready to name. Tell him I will be down shortly, she said. When she entered the sitting room, she almost didn't recognize him. Adrian Thorne, the man who had filled rooms with storm and power, now stood with his shoulders bent, his coat damp from fog, his eyes hollow with sleeplessness. He bowed, not a polite inclination, a bow so low it shook her. Eleanor, he said quietly, I know I have no right to stand before you, yet here I am. She crossed her arms, steadying herself. What do you want, Your Grace? He winced. No. I need to prove that the man who hurt you no longer exists. She said nothing, so he continued, each word stripped of pride. Last night, I saw the woman you've become. Brilliant, unshakable, stronger than all those who tried to break you. And I realized, standing there as you spoke with such strength, that I have never deserved you. Her breath trembled. He went on, but even if you choose Alverton, even if you never forgive me, I will not let the world rewrite your story the way it once did. He reached into his coat and withdrew a sealed envelope. Inside is a letter, he said, addressed to the Duchess of Ravensleigh, to Lady Harwood, and to every member of the ton who participated in your humiliation. Eleanor's blood chilled. What does it say? She whispered. He met her Hase, voice steady. That I take full responsibility. That my silence was the true source of the scandal. That the portrait was never an indiscretion but a testament to your extraordinary talent. And that every person who mocked you did so because they were small, not because you were. Her breath stilled. You would ruin yourself socially, she said, for a mistake you made 5 years ago? Yes, he answered simply. I should have done so then. I will do so now. Her fingers trembled. Your reputation would never recover. He nodded. I know. And still you're willing? I would do worse, he said softly. Much worse, if it meant you could walk into any room without your past hanging around your shoulders like chains I forged. The air in the room thinned. Eleanor had expected begging, apologies, tears, perhaps. She had not expected this. A man willing to use his own name as a shield to repair the wounds he once inflicted. He placed the envelope on the table. I will deliver it tomorrow morning, unless you ask me not to. Why? She whispered. His voice cracked. Because love without accountability is not love, and I will never again ask you to bear the burden of my mistakes. Herhart stumbled dangerously. Before she could speak, he took a step back, as though fearing he'd overwhelm her. I also made another arrangement, he said quietly. One I hope you accept, regardless of how you feel toward me. She frowned. What arrangement? Your grandfather left instructions for a trust in your name, Adrian said. Funds intended to support your independence. Your stepmother hid it. I found the papers in Mr. Hale's archives. Eleanor's pulse spiked. My stepmother hid my inheritance? Yes. Adrian's jaw tightened. She ensured you would return home with nothing. Dependent, vulnerable. Eleanor's stomach twisted in cold realization. He continued, "The trust includes enough to secure housing, studio space, and tuition for any academy in Europe." Her knees weakened. This was not a small kindness. This was freedom, the very thing she had spent years grasping for. And, Adrian added, "It is legally yours, signed by your grandfather. No one, not your stepmother, not society, not even I, can take it from you." Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. "How long have you known about this?" "Before you returned," he said quietly. "I wanted you to have a choice. Options you never had before." She stared at him, voice barely a whisper. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" "I feared you would think it a bribe," he said, pain flickering in his eyes. "Or worse, that you would believe I came to fix what I broke with money rather than remorse." Her breath trembled. "Adrian," he stiffened, her first time saying his name without anger. He swallowed hard. "So," he whispered, "tell me what to do. I will follow any command, even if the command is simply to walk away." His vulnerability was overwhelming. He, an earl, a man born to power, now stood before her stripped of every shield, every defense, every semblance of pride. She steadied herself. "I do not want you to walk away." His breath caught sharply. "But," she continued, "I also cannot simply step into your arms and pretend 5 years of pain didn't happen." His shoulders sagged, but he nodded. "I would never ask that." "You need to prove your change," she said. "Not with grand gestures, not with wealth, but with consistency, with humility, with actions." He bowed his head. "Then actions you will have." A knock interrupted them. Sebastian entered, having been directed by her maid. He paused, reading the tension instantly. "Miss Harwood," he said gently, "I have the final documents from the academy. They await your decision." Eleanor turned to him, heart pulling in 2 directions. Sebastian's eyes softened. "Whatever your choice, I will support it." Adrian lowered his gaze, not resentful, but accepting. Eleanor stepped between them. 2 men, 2 truths, 2 futures. "I need space," she said softly. "Time to breathe, to decide who I am, apart from the wounds and the men standing before me." Sebastian nodded. "Take all the time you need." Adrian bowed. "I will wait, no matter how long." She exhaled shakily. "Both of you, please leave me to think." Sebastian placed a hand over his heart. "Of course." Adrian whispered one last word. "Eleanor." Then both men left, closing the door behind them. Eleanor sank onto the sofa, breath trembling, mind spiraling. 2 offers, 2 loves, 2 possibilities, but only one woman to make the decision. And for the first time in her life, she was choosing not from fear or desperation or longing, but from strength. Chapter 9. Emotional Climax. The rain did not stop for 3 days. It fell in thin, relentless sheets over London, turning carriages into blurred shadows and cobblestones into mirrors of trembling light. Eleanor welcomed the storm. It echoed the tumult inside her. Violent, unsteady, cleansing. During those days, she did not see Adrian. She did not see Sebastian. She did not attend soirees, nor entertain callers, nor read the countless letters that arrived from curious acquaintances and opportunistic strangers. She painted. Her cottage-turned studio was small, but light spilled in generously from the tall windows. She moved with feverish purpose, strokes sharp, colors bold, as though wrestling her heart into pigment and form. Her canvas filled with faces, women she'd met in the countryside, a fisherman's daughter with a laugh like sunlight, an elderly widow whose wrinkles told stories of quiet resilience, children she had taught to draw with feather quills and lamp soot. These were her truths, not the ballroom, not the scandal, not the whispers that once shaped her. Yet even as she lost herself in paint, 2 faces lodged stubbornly in her mind. Sebastian warmth, steadiness, a future carved in soft lines. Adrian stormlight, regret, devotion carved from the raw edges of a broken man. 2 paths, both calling her, one gently, one desperately. On the morning of the 4th day, she stepped back from her easel, hands trembling with exhaustion. The painting staring back at her wasn't one she had intended to make. It was her, not the Eleanor of 5 years ago, naive, wounded, hungry for the approval of a man who never looked at her as she deserved. This was the Eleanor, forged by exile, The Eleanor rebuilt by hardship. The Eleanor who stood alone in a ballroom and forced society to listen. Her eyes in the portrait were unflinching, proud. A woman who knew her worth. She covered her mouth as tears rose not of sadness, but of recognition. She had found herself again. A knock sounded at the door. She tensed. "Who is it?" "It is I," the voice said gently. "Lord Sebastian Alverton." Eleanor wiped her hands and opened the door. He stood with a cloak, soaked from rain, curls damp, eyes warm with concern. "I hoped you might allow me a moment," he said. "If not today, then soon." "Come in," she said softly. He stepped inside, his gaze immediately drawn to the portrait. "My God," he whispered. "Eleanor, this is extraordinary." Her cheeks warmed. "It is still unfinished. Even unfinished, it holds truth. Your truth. The Academy will be fortunate to have you." Eleanor's heart fluttered with both pride and uncertainty. "Sebastian, I have not yet decided." "I know," he said gently. "And I have not come to pressure you." He stepped closer, not invading, but close enough to feel the sincerity in his presence. "I came to offer something else, something honest." Eleanor met his gaze. "What is it?" He inhaled deeply. "When I first met you, I admired your art. When I spoke with you, I admired your mind. But when I saw you in that ballroom, facing down cruelty with grace, I admired your soul." Her breath trembled. Sebastian continued, voice soft but unwavering. "I wish to be part of your future, but only if that future strengthens you. I will never cage you, Eleanor. I will never demand you choose art or love. I offer partnership, equality, a life where you grow, not shrink." Her eyes burned. "Sebastian, I want you," he said simply. "Not as a prize, not as a possession, but as a woman I respect deeply." She exhaled shakily. "You say all the things I once wished to hear, and I mean everyone." Before she could respond, another knock sounded urgent, frantic. Eleanor stiffened. Sebastian frowned. "Are you expecting anyone?" "No." She approached the door cautiously. Another knock, louder this time. Rain battered the windows like impatient fingers. "Eleanor, please!" a voice gasped from the other side. Her hand froze on the knob. "Adrian." She opened the door slowly. The Earl of Winthorpe stood drenched from head to toe, coat soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked nothing like the untouchable nobleman London revered. He looked human, fractured, desperate. "Eleanor," he breathed. "I am begging you, hear me." Sebastian stepped into view. His expression remained calm, but his presence sharpened the air. Adrian's eyes flicked to him, tension sparking. "Alverton." "Thorn," Sebastian replied evenly. Eleanor swallowed hard. "Adrian, what are you doing here?" He stepped inside without waiting, his breath uneven, his hands shaking from cold or fear. She couldn't tell. "I received word," he said hoarsely, "of your commission, of your work, of your portrait." Her eyes widened. "How did you?" "London talks," he said, voice cracking. "And I needed to see you. I needed to know you were all right." "I am," she said softly. "As you see." He looked at her, not her face alone, but every inch of her, as though rediscovering her for the first time. "You look," he swallowed hard. "You look like the woman I always saw, even when I did not have the courage to say so." Sebastian interjected. "Eleanor does not need flattery. She needs truth." Adrian met his gaze. "I have nothing but truth left." He turned back to Eleanor. "The letter," he said. "The one for the Duchess. I delivered it." Eleanor's eyes widened. You delivered it already?" "Yes. My reputation is in ruins. Invitations withdrawn. Patrons appalled. But I do not regret it. Not one word of it." Sebastian raised a brow. "That is a bold sacrifice." Adrian shook his head. "Not bold, necessary. The bare minimum of what she deserved." He took a step closer. "I will do anything," he murmured. "Anything to prove I am no longer the man who failed you." Eleanor's heart twisted painfully. Sebastian spoke gently. "Eleanor, you do not need to be rescued. Not by him, not by me." "I know," she whispered. "Then choose," Adrian said, voice breaking. "Choose the life that gives you dignity, the man who fights for you, the future you deserve. And choose it Sebastian added softly. Based on what strengthens you, not who suffers without you. Eleanor trembled. Two truths, two loves, two futures. She looked at Sebastian's kind eyes, gentle heart, respect woven into every word. She looked at Adrian's tormented gaze, humility where arrogance once lived, love forged through pain and remorse. Her voice quivered. I cannot choose between you. Adrian closed his eyes, agony flickering across his features. Sebastian exhaled slowly, accepting, yet pained. But I can choose myself, she whispered. Both men still. She stepped back, lifting her chin with quiet strength. For 5 years, my life was shaped by wounds inflicted by others, society, my family, even you, Adrian. I will not make my future an extension of my past. She turned toward her, painting the portrait of herself. Strong, unbroken, reborn. My choice, she said softly, is to stand alone. For now, Sebastian bowed his head, a gesture of respect. Eleanor, you honor yourself. Adrian's breath broke. Eleanor, please. She shook her head gently. Heal your past, Adrian, and let me build my future. Tears filled his eyes, real, unshielded, devastating. Sebastian touched her hand lightly. If ever you wish for partnership, not dependency, I will be here, Adrian whispered, voice shattered. And if ever you wish for love that endures despite its scars, so will I. Eleanor's throat tightened painfully, but she did not falter. This is my moment, she said, and I choose me. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and for the first time, Eleanor felt truly free. Chapter 10. Resolution. Rain softened to a mist by morning, leaving London washed clean as if the sky itself had tired of grief. Eleanor stood at her studio window, watching the pale light gather across the rooftops. It was a new day, quiet and unburdened. For the first time in years, her heart felt still, not empty, but settled. She brewed tea slowly, savoring the sound of the kettle instead of the echo of her own thoughts. No knocks came, no letters, no footsteps of men pacing outside her door with declarations they should have made years earlier. Just silence and peace. She welcomed both. The world responds. By midday, the consequences of Adrian's released letter swept through the ton like wildfire. Her maid rushed in, breathless, clutching a newspaper. Miss Look. Eleanor took the paper. An entire column was dedicated to the letter. Her name was mentioned not as scandal, but as victim of injustice, and as an artist of uncommon promise. Her fingers trembled. She had not needed Adrian to do this, but he had done it anyway. Finally, he had chosen what was right, not what was easy. But she could not define herself through his regret. Not anymore. And she would not rush to him simply because the world now applauded what should have been done 5 years ago. Just as she folded the paper, another letter arrived, this one sealed with the crest of the Royal Academy. She opened it with cautious hope. Miss Harwood, we formally invite you to present your work in our mid-season exhibition. Your portrait series reflects a truth rarely captured in modern art. We would be honored to showcase it. Her breath caught. It was everything she had dreamed of. Not because of Sebastian, not because of Adrian, because of her. She pressed the letter to her chest, letting the joy rise slowly, gently like dawn. A visit from a gentleman. A soft knock broke her reverie. She opened the door to find Sebastian not drenched in rain this time, but carrying a small leather portfolio. Before you say anything, he said, raising a hand, I am not here to change your mind. Her lips curved. Good. He smiled, a little sadly. I only came to deliver this. He handed her the portfolio. Inside were sketches, studies he had made of her work, while recommending her to the academy. Eleanor's breath softened. Sebastian, I didn't know you did all this. I wanted your art to be seen, he said gently. And I wanted to show you that my admiration for you has never been conditional on romance or hope or the future. He stepped back, offering her a respectful bow. I will not pursue you, he said. Not until you have pursued everything you deserve first. Her throat tightened. You are a good man. He gave a small, genuine smile. And you are a woman the world will remember. He left without asking for anything. It hurt. Not because she'd chosen herself, but because she now understood the rarity of a man who could love without possession. The Duke's last gesture. 2 days passed before she saw Adrian again. Not because he forced his way into her life, but because he didn't. No letters, no visits, no demands, just space like she asked for. So when she found him waiting outside her studio on the morning of the exhibition, she did not feel anger, only surprise. He stood beside his horse, hands clasped behind his back, posture still noble despite the weight that clung to him. "Eleanor," he said quietly. Her heart didn't lurch. It didn't break. It simply steadied. "Adrian," he inhaled shallowly, as if bracing for rejection. "I heard you were showing your work today." "I am. I will not attend," he said. "My presence would overshadow yours, and today must be yours alone." She blinked, startled by the humility in those words. He continued, "But I wish to bring you something. A gesture not of love, not of apology, but of truth." He handed her a wooden box. Inside, wrapped in silk, was her old sketchbook. The one she'd lost 5 years ago. The one that had been weaponized against her. Her breath hitched. "How did you?" "I kept it," he said softly. "I meant to return it, but I could not bring myself to face you after what I'd done." Her hands shook as she traced the familiar worn edges. "I have read every page," he admitted. "Every line, every stroke, every word. It was the only piece of you I had left." "Adrian," she whispered. He shook his head. "I do not tell you this to win anything. Only so you know how deeply I cherished what I once destroyed." She closed the book gently. "Why now?" "Because you deserve all of your past back," he said. "Not only the parts that hurt." Silence stretched between them. Not tense, not bitter, not unresolved. Just quiet. He bowed not as an earl, but as a man setting down the last burden he carried. "I am leaving London for a time," he said. "I need to rebuild myself away from the expectations that forged my worst mistakes." Eleanor's chest tightened, not with longing, but with understanding. "Where will you go?" she asked softly. "North," he said. "To my mother's childhood estate. She painted, you know. I never appreciated it. I wish to learn what she saw." Her lips parted slightly. "You're going to paint?" A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "I am going to learn how to see." Her breath trembled. He touched the brim of his hat, voice barely above a whisper. "If fate is kind, and if you ever look for me, I will be waiting, but not expecting, and not asking." And then he turned and rode away, quietly, gracefully, humbly, leaving behind the ghost of the man he used to be. The Academy's exhibition hall was alight with golden chandeliers and murmured admiration. Eleanor's portraits lined the main wall faces of laborers, widows, and children, all rendered with deep humanity. People gathered around her work, marveling. Such emotion, such honesty, a revelation. Eleanor stood in the center of it all, not nervous, not overshadowed, not wounded, complete, whole. A woman who chose herself first. As the evening swelled with acclaim, Sebastian appeared at her side, offering quiet applause. "To your future," he murmured. Eleanor smiled, not with uncertainty, not with fear, but with conviction. "To my future," she echoed, and for the first time, she did not wonder which man stood waiting for her. She wondered only where she would go next. Chapter 11 Epilogue. 6 months later. Summer arrived in soft breezes and lavender skies, carrying with it the quiet hum of a world that had finally stopped watching Eleanor Harwood and had instead begun learning from her. The Royal Academy's exhibition had been a triumph. Her portrait series, Faces of the Forgotten, toured Edinburgh, Bath, York, and even Paris. She had received commissions from scholars, widows, baronesses, and, most meaningful of all, the fishermen and working families on the coast who had first trusted her with their likenesses. Her studio on Chancery Lane bustled with light and canvases, with charcoal smudges on the floor and laughter floating through the windows. She taught 3 students now, all young women the Academy once would have turned away. Eleanor Harwood had not simply survived London, she had changed it. This particular morning, sunlight streamed through her windows as she hung a new painting to dry, her self-portrait completed at last. Signed with confident flourish. A knock sounded. "Come in," she called. Her maid stepped in. "Miss Harwood, you have a letter." Eleanor smiled. "Another commission?" "No, miss." The maid hesitated. "It is from the Earl of Winthorpe." Eleanor still. The world did not tilt. Her breath did not rush. Her pulse did not betray her. She simply felt curiosity. "Thank you," she said, taking the envelope. After her maid left the room, she opened the letter slowly, allowing memory and calm to sit beside one another, no longer foes, but familiar companions. The handwriting was unmistakably his. "Eleanor, if this letter finds you amid paint and sunlight, then the world is as it should be. I have been in Northwood since the day I left London. The estate is quiet, but not empty. There is a lake where my mother once painted, and I sit by it often, trying to understand how she captured light without ever chasing perfection. I am learning to paint. Poorly, but earnestly." She smiled involuntarily. "The villagers here speak kindly of you. I had not realized your mother's name carried such affection. They tell stories of her kindness. I listen to everyone as a student listens to history, hoping it shapes him. I heard of your exhibition. I attended the final showing in York anonymously. When I stood before your portraits, I felt as though the world had finally looked upon you with the reverence I once feared to show." Eleanor's breath grew soft. "You asked for space. I have given it. You asked for consistency. I am learning it. You asked that I rebuild myself not for you, but for myself. And so I am trying, each day, to become a man worthy of the gentleness I once destroyed. If our paths cross again, I hope to greet you not as a man pleading for forgiveness, but as one who has earned his own peace. If they do not, then know this: you were the making of me. Adrian." Eleanor closed the letter. No tears came, no ache of unresolved longing. Only warmth for him, for herself, for the winding path that had led them to become better versions of who they once were. She set the letter gently on her desk. Another knock stirred the air. Lord Sebastian Alverton stepped into the doorway, hat in hand, wearing a smile that held both fondness and restraint. "Eleanor," he said softly, "your students are waiting, and the academy wishes to finalize your autumn residency." She returned his smile. "I'll be ready in a moment." Sebastian glanced at the sealed letter on the table. He did not ask. He did not pry. He simply met her gaze and said, "You seem lighter today." "I am," she replied. He offered his arm not possessively, not urgently, but as an invitation. "Walk with me? The morning is too beautiful to waste indoors." Eleanor glanced once more at her studio, at the portraits, at the sunlight, at the life she had built with her own hands. Then she took his arm, not as a promise, not as a decision, but as a moment present, sincere, open to possibility. They stepped onto the sunlit street together, the city unfolding ahead of them. Children laughed in the alleyways. Merchants called out their morning wares. The world pulsed with new beginnings. As they walked, Sebastian looked at her with quiet admiration. "You know," he murmured, "one day the world will say it knew you before you were famous." She laughed softly. "I do not seek fame." "No," he agreed. "You seek meaning, and that is far rarer." Her steps slowed. "Sebastian, I don't know what the future holds." He smiled. "That is the beauty of it." The breeze lifted her hair as they continued walking, and Eleanor felt herself exhale fully for the first time in years. No fear, no shame, no wounds echoing in her ribs, just possibility, a future shaped by her own hand. Behind her, in a quiet estate up north, a man healed his past with paint and patience. Beside her, another walked with warmth and respect, but ahead of her, always ahead, was the life she had chosen for herself, and she would meet it with the strength she had fought so hard to claim.